and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And Alejandro Rojas is coming up with UFO updates in just 1 minute. Our guest this evening is John DeSouza. He's going to be talking about his new book and extraterrestrials as interdimensional, which is a topic that comes up a lot. I thought it might be an interesting topic. So stay tuned for that. I want to thank everyone that supports the show. And if you'd like to help us out for $2 or more a month, that is on our website, podcastufo.com. Also, we are live streaming on YouTube every Wednesday night at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch that right on our website or on YouTube. And you can also listen to the entire show for free every Thursday night from 10 to midnight, and that's on the Dark Matter Digital Network. That's it for me, Alejandro. How's it going?
I am well. How are you?
Good. It's it's nice and green up here on top of the mountain. It's
nice.
It's
good.
In the 80s today. Pretty warm.
Really?
Yeah. Pretty nice.
I mean, it was like in the 70s. It's going to be in the 80s here, which is really cool. So it's really nice for us.
Yeah, I don't mind the reversal.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, we have these things called black flies. I don't know. They are terrible. It's like a cloud. I actually have like a screen thing I have to wear if I'm doing garden work. So can't wait for that.
Because you have these flies?
Yeah, they're called black flies. They bite.
Wow.
Just big swarms of them come around you. It's really...
Holy moly.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
That's right. And I had an alien invasion last night. I had a pincher beetle over 2.5 inches long. Mm-hmm. Somehow was running around my house last night. I got pictures of it. Looks very, very alien-like.
Really?
Yeah. Invasion.
Wow.
So what's going on with the U.S.?
Stuff. That's way more scary than the desert, man. I haven't had nothing in my house. No creatures or none of that. So,
wow.
Just lots of quail running around. They're cute little guys. And, so it's been very pleasant around my homestead. No invasions of any sort. So that's good.
Yeah. Hey, you have a lot of coyotes out there, though, right? Because I remember seeing some when I was out there at your conference. So that probably takes care of a lot of the other little things around.
Yeah, out there at the conference, it's a little more, rural. At least there's space around, so you can often hear them singing at night, which is cool. And when you go hiking. But even in town, you can hear that sometimes. So, yeah, lots of coyotes.
Yeah, awesome.
And even a couple roadrunners. I've seen, by my house, I've seen a roadrunner a couple times recently.
There was one cool. At your conference.
Oh, was there? I wouldn't doubt it, yeah.
Yeah, we were chasing it around, not really chasing it around, but watching it. You can get fairly close and the thing just goes like crazy. Me, Carol.
They don't make that noise.
I know, but I thought I'd just throw that in there.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on with the UFO news?
What's going on with UFOs? So we have kind of a cool story here, and I think a UK tabloid picked it up. Oh, UK tabloids. And it got pretty popular, but we have it straight from the source. And the good thing is, I'll let your listeners in on a secret. These MUFON stories that we post the entire story for people to see for free. Whereas, if you go to MUFON.com, you're only going to see a picture or two, maybe, and a paragraph or two. So you don't get the full story. You have to actually be a MUFON member and pay to get the full story. But or you can come to our house and get the full, or our website.
Yeah, our house. I like that.
It's our digital house and get the full story. So here's the full story on this. So this is a sighting. It's a video by a British bus driver. So this bus driver says he's waiting for his bus to start work. This is at about 9:41 p.m. on April 17th. When this happened, he was actually talking to his best man about his upcoming wedding on the phone when he freaks out. He saw these lights that he said were in a triangular pattern rotating on its axis and wobbling slightly is how he explained it. So he says he's been interested in UFOs. There were some street lights around and stuff, so he's tried to film it with his phone, and he did get a little bit of film. And it's about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, this video. And most of it, is him trying to get the thing on video, so it's not towards the end till you can see these 3 lights. So they are white lights. They don't look obviously like balloons or Chinese lanterns. It's a possibility, I suppose, still, though. So he ended up being late because he was looking at these UFOs or whatever they were. So it's kind of an interesting video.
It is.
The guy,
by the way,
you've seen it.
I have seen it. By the way, it's not safe for work, as they say. He does say he does cuss quite a bit, and that's because, and I know exactly why. It's because the street lights keep getting his iPhone out of focus. It keeps focusing on the street lights automatically. So he's running around, and he goes, I can't believe I'm actually seeing one. I think that's what he says at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good video, though.
Yeah, it is pretty decent. Pretty interesting one. I think that's one of the best UFO stories we've gotten in a while, UFO submissions. So, yeah, that's a good one. So check it out at openminds.tv. And also, actually, I want to talk about a couple of the headlines that came up today. So you know how we post headlines every day. And there was a couple of interesting ones that were posted today by friends of ours. One, by Lee Spiegel, posted a story. I don't know if you saw this, but essentially Lee busted Pravda with photoshopping a picture and claiming that there is UFOs in there.
This is the Russian one with the sun?
Yes. So Pravda is a Russian paper. And remember, all media is owned by the government. So it is it's unfortunately propaganda. They're the kings of it. So that's what's hard when it comes to Russian news and Russian news reporting. But yeah, they posted this picture of the sun with these dots on it and claiming there's UFOs. So Lee did some research into this, and he found that it's the picture they posted is actually photoshopped of the original picture, which he found. So he's saying, hey, you guys, you're faking crud, which is entirely possible because I don't know, like recently, Pravda in the last year or two has, and Russia Today, they've featured UFO people from the United States that are often quite dubious. So they've picked up on these sensationalistic stories. Why? I don't know if there could be intentions behind it that are more, orchestrated or have more of an effect than attempting to have more of an effect than we thought. I mean, I think that it's possible they're trying to undermine, people's NASA's credibility, which I think stories like this help do. But the UK tabloids have been doing this sort of stuff for these last few years too,
right?
And I think their only intention is to get more clicks.
That's
the same
right.
reason they have bikini girls all over their websites and everything, or less. They're all about getting clicks, and I think that they're clickbaiting. But it's interesting, and it's kind of cool that Lee wrote this story and called them out.
Do you think that is it possible that they may have been sent the image by someone and took it for, face value?
That's entirely possible. That's usually what the UK tabloids do. They just go out to these sites that post sensational stuff and take their stuff and post it. They don't do any vetting. They don't figure out if it's fake or not. They just say, UFO expert Jimmy Joe, UFO hoaxer, says this is real, and they post it. So that's entirely possible, but at least from what Lee feels that it could have been Pravda themselves who did this. So hard to say, but I that's a great thought, because I wonder that myself.
So anything else happening?
Yeah, another interesting one is from Nick Pope. So Nick Pope wrote a article for a news site in the UK called iNews. And his article was, how would we fare in an alien invasion? And essentially, he is kind of piggybacking off of what we talked about, I think, last week, which was Ridley Scott. We've got a story on that on our site as well. But Ridley Scott talking about how, aliens are kind of bad. We should run for it if you see a UFO. And I don't know, some people do, some people don't. Some people try to get a video of it. But essentially, he kind of writes about his thoughts on all of this. So it's kind of cool.
Do you think that there's something in place in any government, like in case we get invaded, this is the steps that we should take? Or do you think that would be caught completely by surprise?
No, I'm sure there are protocols out there by think tanks, just because, the government will ask think tanks to do this for them, to come up with different scenarios so that they have these protocols and these plans to call upon just in case something happens. Have they asked for this sort of thing? I don't know for sure. I mean, it would be interesting. There might be some people who would know. Nick Pope would be someone to ask. He says there's no real plans, but sometimes these think tanks, just as an exercise, will do these sorts of things. So over the years, because they do so much of all of this, I would imagine that some think tank has kind of come up with a plan or kind of thought about this. And just as an exercise, for what the heck, I think, keeps them thinking, and it, gets an exercise for them to get together and talk and discuss and research. So it's possible. I wouldn't doubt that there is some kind of plan out there somewhere.
Wouldn't that be fascinating to talk to someone that was, part of a think tank that actually went through this process? To me, I think. Well,
there is a book out there, and it's really interesting. We tried to get one of the guys who wrote the book, to come to our conference, and maybe I'll try that again. There were two people who wrote the book, and I can't remember the details right now, but I remember one of the guys was an expert on this sort of thing, not just aliens, but overall coming up with plans. And so they wrote a book about this. What would we do if there's an alien invasion and kind of stuff? And these were both people who are in the field who come up with these sorts of plans for the government. So that book, I think, is the best thing I've seen out there. I can't remember what the book is. People can Google it and look for that alien invasion book. Of course, you're going to find a lot of weird stuff out there. So
you're right. Yeah.
But there is one book, serious book out there where they took a look. In fact, during the time when I was trying to get this guy to our conference, he was on a television show, some television show about, weapons and defense and stuff like that. So he was super busy at the time. But I don't know if that show's on anymore. So that's why maybe it'll hit him up again. But I don't know if I have a copy of that book. I'll have to look at my desk here and figure that out. But I remember I was attempting to get a copy at one point.
Wow, how about that? So is that it for the news this time?
That's it for the news. You can find all of those stories on the front page of openminds.tv. And thank you, Martin, so much for having me on once.
I think I owe you a big thank you as well, sir. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
really.
Watch out for those aliens, although I think they're actually just bugs.
I think so, too. All right. You take care, and I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you later.
All right, everyone, hang in there for this quick music break, and we'll be right back with John DeSouza. Hey, hello, everyone. Before I get started here, I wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. Thank you for joining the show. And that is, well, in the chat right now is our blog writer from India. There's a brand new blog up, just went up the other day, a great one. It's basically UFOs over India. This goes back to ancient times. Really well written. We had to make a change this week. Our Monday Everything Else show with Edward C. May was switched for Friday because he's actually on some island celebrating his wife's 70th birthday. Forgot all about that. So that show is going to come up on Friday evening. So check that out, the Everything Else show. You can get to it from our website, Podcast UFO. And that's it. It's time for me to introduce our guest, John DeSouza, former FBI. And he has written a book, and we're going to be talking about that and a lot more. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with you and your listeners, viewers. It's really a great honor.
Well, great. I know you found me. I believe you actually wrote me an email, and it's always good when people reach out in that way. I'm just trying to change the chat that you and I were using on the video here. Hang on just a minute. For some reason, it's showing over to the side, and I can't get rid of it. I'd rather you take the whole screen over, and I don't know how to change that. So can you start? I'm going to work on that. Can you start by telling the audience a little bit about your background and
Sure.
what got you interested? You had a sighting early, but basically just we want to know who you are. So go ahead, if you would.
Yes. For your viewers, my name is John DeSouza. I was a special agent in the FBI for over 20 years. During that time, I worked mostly counterterrorism investigations, a lot of high-profile investigations, the Unabomber, the World Trade Center bombing of 93, and the 9/11 terrorist acts that occurred. And many others, violent crimes also. But also during my time in the FBI, I also was collected a lot of what I call the real X-Files, and I share those with people in my books today. I'm an investigator that I believe has a greater objectivity in paranormal events. And the reason for that is because I have seen both sides of the equation. For instance, when I was about, and this is related in my books, like the Extra Dimensionals, when I was about 9 years old, I had a couple of experiences that really opened up my eyes. I had an observation experience when I was 9. I was growing up in New York City. I was with my parents out in New York City at night on a big rental hall where a few hundred people were gathered for a wedding reception. And it was, for me and a lot of other little kids, it wasn't very entertaining for us inside there. So it was about 1 a.m, and it was probably way past our bedtime that any of us had ever stayed up to that point. And we spilled out into the streets. We ran out into the streets. It was like I said, the streets were deserted. It was late. It was the middle of the city of New York City, Manhattan. And there were basically no cars out there, no nothing. And we ran. We ran, and we were playing in a group. Got very spirited. One of the kids hit me in the stomach. So then I went down on the sidewalk. One of the kids yelled out, "He's really hurt." And so they did. They all just took off running, and they ran back to the rental hall where we came from. And I was left there by myself. I was staring up at between two of the tallest buildings I'd ever seen to that point. And it was a very starry night. It was stars everywhere except in the space above these two buildings. And I looked up, and I just kept seeing a black space up between these two tall buildings, and there were no stars, and it looked like sort of like black ink cloud, like the kind of squid would give off in the water if you try to grab it. And I kept looking at that, and suddenly up at the sky at this, and suddenly from the bottom of this blackish cloud emerged lights. There were lights coming out, and a UFO vehicle, came out at the bottom of that thing and started coming towards me. And so by this time I was on my feet and just looking up at it, and it was proceeding down towards me very slowly. And I was looking up at it. I felt like a spotlight came over me, and I felt like a perception of this vehicle, that it was intelligent, alive, however, conscious, however you want to phrase that. And two teenage girls appeared on my left, and they were screaming their heads off. So I know somebody else was seeing it as well. And they were screaming that, and one of them screamed, "World might be ending, little boy, you better run home." And they were hugging each other and looking up at this thing and screaming, and then they disappeared. And then I was still looking at the thing as it was approaching, and it was like we both changed our minds at the same time. I took a step back, and the thing reversed course and just went back up. And basically, like a cartoon character jumps in the hole, pulls a hole in after it, this thing went back up into the cloud, and the cloud was gone. I could see the stars again up there. And I just took off at that point. I took off, ran back to the hall where my parents were, and I just tried to explain to them what happened. And they were not happy to hear about it in public, that's for sure. And so later on at home, it went a little better, but not much better. And that was my first great experience.
Before you move on from that,
right.
Did you talk about this a lot in your life, or did your parents kind of make you feel bad about that? Like, did they believe you?
Not at all. My mom did believe me. My mom was a person that was able to speak to me in terms that I could understand. And she gave me a briefing, basically on the importance of not revealing this sort of thing to certain people or in front of certain people, because there would be negative consequences. And she never told me what those negative consequences were, but I took her meaning and I understood. She said these sorts of themes, these sort of things, you can talk about with certain people, but you cannot discuss them in open air, in front of general public, because it will turn out bad.
Well, it's not right now. You're talking about now. Hey, this part where the two teenage girls said to you, "The world is ending." That is something that I've actually heard a number of people say. That's like the first thought that goes through someone's head a lot of times when during a major sighting. So I find that pretty interesting.
That's strange that you say that, because that was the first thing. And what's funny is after that young lady said that, I realized how important it was that they were there, because it actually confirmed that other people were seeing it. But more importantly, after that they disappeared, and people ask me sometimes, were they taken? Did they run away? And I really don't have any idea, because I never looked back. I just knew that they were gone. I knew they weren't there anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
So that end of the world comment, that's funny, I guess. Yeah, when your paradigm is ripped out completely, that is the first thought many people have.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so you somehow get into the FBI, which is like kind of a dream. I would consider kind of a dream job, and very hard to
Absolutely.
get into. So how did all that? How did it lead? How did your life lead to that?
Once I was in the FBI because I became an attorney, and I wasn't really interested in the practice of law, but I knew that was one of the categories that FBI likes very much. So it helped me also to become an FBI special agent. And once I became an FBI special agent, I had a couple of more experiences. I thought I was done with paranormal experiences, but I did have some. And the first great experience I had of the paranormal was when 9/11 happened. Well, actually, no, before, including before 9/11 happened, and that was the experience that I had, along with many other law enforcement officers, of the Indigo Kids of 9/11, which I write about in my first book, The Para Investigators. And that was basically the story of kids all over the country, as young as 4 or 5 years old, going all the way up to about as high as 11 to 12 years old. Kids all over the country who had these experiences in the weeks before 9/11 happened, where they had visions, they had experiences and precog experiences of what would happen on 9/11. And these kids were reported by caretakers and babysitters, school bus drivers. Parents wouldn't report their own kids, but after 9/11 happened, there was this big see something, say something campaign. And so anything that could have any sort of relation, any possible relation to the terrorist acts had to be reported and had to be investigated all the way out. And so we had, and I can tell you, for instance, we had a little girl who was on a playground and wasn't playing with the other kids one day, and she was just sitting there in her little skirt and sitting in the dirt and kind of tracing something with her finger. A teacher comes over, says to her, "Are you okay, sweetheart? Are you all right?" And the little girl says, "Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just thinking." And the teacher goes to walk away. The little girl pulls on her skirt violently and says to her, "Tomorrow, make sure you stay away from tall buildings, because tall buildings sometimes fall down, and sometimes they fall on people." So that was one that teacher probably walked away and just chalked it up to too much sugar. There was a little boy doing an arts and craft, and this is on my Facebook, on the trailer for my book, The Para Investigators. There's a little boy who's doing arts and crafts. He's doing finger paintings. He's painting in his class very happily there. And teacher comes over and says to him, this is a very beautiful painting. You painted these 2 tall buildings, and they appear to be glowing. It's very beautiful. And you have angels flying out of the buildings with these red wings. And the little boy said, "Those buildings aren't glowing. Those buildings are on fire. And those people aren't angels, they're people, and those wings, they're on fire, and they're jumping out of these buildings." So teacher just walks away from a kid like that again and just doesn't think about it again until something happens. There's another little boy who woke up, apparently didn't sleep very much in the days before 9/11, and wakes up on a school bus, and he's screaming about a building being on fire and people burning alive. And the school bus driver wakes him up, and kid goes to school like nothing happened. Now, all of these incidences were seen by adults, and they kind of didn't really put much stock in it until 9/11 happened. And then they remembered these incidences, and they reported them in.
So they actually reported these to the FBI? These are...
Yeah, to task forces, and in these task forces that mix up FBI and police departments and other state departments. There's these task forces had members from all jurisdictions in them, and so big strapping law enforcement officers with guns had to go out and had to interview, not to say interrogate. They had to interview these little kids and get them to remember these very often traumatic dreams or visions that a lot of times these kids had to really be reminded that this even happened, because it didn't really connect to anything in their minds. And so, yeah, they had to be interviewed thoroughly with the parents' help, of course, and they had to be, and the whole lead investigation had to be run out for any possible connection to terrorism. In other words, did these kids overhear something maybe? Did they overhear, parents that were in league with some terrorist somewhere? And, is that maybe how they got this bad dream, this vision, this precog impression that they got? Maybe they got it from a group of people that they overheard. So all of that had to be explored. And in every single one of these cases, of course, every single time it always came back, no connection to terrorism whatsoever. And, background checks, of course, on the family and the parents, and nothing negative or derogatory ever came up on these. So pretty much all of these incidences were 100% paranormal. And that was really shocking. That was like you said about, people saying maybe the world is ending when their paradigm gets ripped out. All of these law enforcement officers, because we had conventions long after 9/11, we had gotten together and talked to each other and exchanged these stories. And every single law enforcement officer that was involved with these interviews, like myself, were changed forever, because they knew what the final result on each one of these cases were.
Another unexplainable, just like this topic that I explore here is just totally unexplainable. A lot of people have theories, including your theory. We'll get into that. So I actually have a friend, real quickly, that's a former FBI, and he had the absolute coolest job, and that is he was art theft recovery. Traveled all over the world incognito.
Oh, that is a great job. Oh, I would have loved to hear that one. But that means he had some kind of a master's degree in art history. Right?
He told me that he grew up like I did, just around, his parents were antique dealers. His name is Robert Whitman. Anyone can look at him. He's still, he wrote a great book, really interesting guy. He's been, had machine guns, held up against him. He carried, the briefcases full of cash, pretended to be a dumb person who loved art, or a professor of art, all that stuff. Incognito for 20 years for the FBI all over the world.
That's fascinating. And Martin, you haven't had him on your show?
No. I do the other show I have that's not related to UFOs. That would be fun to have him on that show. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So you were involved for 20 years with the FBI, and why were you called the X? Were you called something like the X-Man? I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, it was not a compliment. It happened during a minor scandal that occurred in the FBI in the 90s, when the X-Files, of course, came out and was hugely popular. And apparently the X-Files were using some stories that came from real-life FBI cases. And to this day, I am still working to track down exactly which episodes match up with actually what FBI cases. Because what happened was some people in our leadership ended up calling the creator of
Yes,
X-Files,
I heard that. Chris Carter. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he talks about this today. And they made him feel, or just understand, or made him feel that they could possibly shut down the X-Files. I don't see what possible excuse they could have for that, or but that's what they made him feel or understand.
Did they accuse him of did they accuse someone of leaking information to him? Is that basically it?
Well, that's what I was accused of, and I had to be able to show that I had no contacts with Chris Carter, and I was able to say that because it's perfectly fine for Chris Carter to talk to retired FBI agents as consultants. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But you're not allowed to consult with people who are at that time working at the FBI. That's not allowed. Definitely not allowed. And so that's what they were concerned about, supposedly. And so Chris Carter was able to show them that he didn't do anything. He wasn't getting information from anywhere strange or anywhere that was currently functioning with the FBI. I was also able to show that I was not consulting, not giving any information to Chris Carter. But by that time, I was already being called the X-Files guy, the X-Files man, because I loved the X-Files so much. But after that happened, they just started calling me the X-Man because I was actually told by superiors that I had been demoted from G-Man to X-Man.
They didn't call you Mulder, huh?
No, that would be nice.
Yeah, right. So your book, you said this is your second. This is your second book, or you have you have more books, don't you, or is it just two?
It is my second book. I love being on video. This is cool. I can do this. My first book is the Para Investigators. That's the one that I wrote as soon as I retired from the FBI. And my second book, we're on video, is the Extra Dimensionals.
Now, when you retire from the FBI, do you sign any type of I don't know exactly what, like a confidentiality or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
So are there do they actually debrief you on certain topics you can't talk about?
Not for me. They never did. But usually if that happens, usually that's political. For instance, they will, if you were involved, I don't know, let's say with Bill Clinton's protection detail, for whatever reason. There's no reason. I mean, if you're involved with something like that, and so there's political considerations involved with that, and they don't want you running around and telling, Bill Clinton's business. Then, they might do a separate set of permanent non-disclosures in perpetuity that you'd have to sign a stack of them to say it's totally separate from your general obligation of maintaining secrecy on general secret methods and techniques and stuff like that. But I never had any sort of political involvement or any sort of like weird project, political anything that I would have been involved with to warrant.
Yeah, FBI is a little political right now.
Oh, man. Yeah, tell me about it. But I think now that the person that was in charge there has been removed, they're hoping that the FBI can get back to the business of what it does in general, and not be a political football anymore.
Yeah, hopefully. Right. Let's talk about your book. What's the scoop behind your theory and the extra dimensionals? Now, and before you get started up, this is, a lot of times the subject does come up. People speculate they could be, from another planet. They could be, number one, it could be time travelers. Extra dimensional does come up. I've had someone on the show, Paul Eno, that kind of goes a little bit along those lines of like a multiverse type of situation. So it's always interesting to hear what your thoughts are and how you came about this topic.
I notice a lot of great thinkers have in the past come up with the same determination that it's starting to look like alien visitors, which, again, I believe that alien visitors are real, that they are visiting the Earth, that UFOs, a certain percentage of them, are real, and are unexplainable and possibly extra-dimensional. And so the extra-dimensional just basically says that alien visitors are not like us. They're not like humans. They don't cram themselves into little metal shells and sail across our galaxies and then arrive here physically like we would. We would get into a rocket ship and go to other planets. Saying what you said about Eno, Jacques Vallée had a great quote. He said, a long time ago, he said, I would be terribly disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than aliens visiting from other planets, because I believe that they are so much more. Mm-hmm. And that was I heard that quote very recently, even though he said it a long time ago. And that's how I feel also. Extra-dimensionality just says that they're just not physical. They are changing themselves and coming from other dimensions into our reality, because it appears that the Earth is possibly a gateway first and is a planet second. That's what a lot of the investigations that I've done have led me to believe, and that's what I've seen. But where I originally got these ideas is actually from the most unlikely place anyone could ever imagine. I actually got it from the FBI, and that's because on July 8th, 1947, there was a document that I examined very carefully in my book called a Memorandum of Importance. I call it the smoking gun document. And it is a document that is out on the, if anybody can actually get this document, download it for free. It's available at the site that is the dumping ground for all declassified FBI documents. And it was written by an FBI supervisor. And it is at vault.fbi.gov. It's right at that site, Vault, which is VAULT.fbi.gov. And that site has thousands and many, many, many thousands of documents that have been declassified, and some of them are in every area you can imagine that has been held many secrets for many years. There's documents on JFK assassination. There's documents on cattle mutilations. There's an entire section of unexplained phenomena. And so you go to that site. You click on the right at unexplained phenomena. Click on that tab. And then on the left, you go to the first word that says UFO. You click on UFO, and then a group of documents will show up. And you click on the left where it says UFO Part 1. And you click on that first group of documents. And you go to page 22 of that group. And on page 22 is a Memorandum of Importance. That is the document that was written by an FBI supervisor, and he wrote it because he was himself a former scientist, a PhD scientist, and he was writing this communication to the scientific community. And he wrote it to them because he was being asked about alien visitors. At this time, it was very, very, very active subject among all scientific community. And so he wrote this because he said he had a source, an informant. And the informant, he writes in this document at the top, he says, my informant is giving me information, and my informant is supernormal. And supernormal is an old-timey word for paranormal, supernatural. And from the context, I'm thinking his informant was not a ghost, and it appears that his informant could actually have been extraterrestrial. in nature. And he actually says, because of who my informant is giving me this information, most of the scientific community will probably ignore what I'm about to say. But he says, but I still have to say it because I have to try to help the situation. And then he goes on to lay out about 8 or 9 conclusions that he was told by his informant. And the primary one of which is that alien visitors are not physical, that they are extra-dimensional, they are coming here. It's like they're beaming themselves in from other dimensions of reality into our reality. He says they change their vibration, and then they change their vibration to blend, to match our physical vibration. And that's how they appear here with us for short periods of time. He says the same is true. He says UFOs are not made of metal. They're made of some kind of radiant material like plasma. He also says that alien visitors are much larger than humans on the average. He says that their mission here is peaceful. He says, however, our Air Force, our airplanes must never attack the UFOs, the genuine UFOs, because he said that would end in catastrophe. And of course, we see what happened a short time later, actually, at the Battle of L.A. And also in 1952 over Washington, D.C., in the airspace above the Capitol building in D.C., when we had the first time that the Air Force was actually sent en masse against a group of UFOs, and it was catastrophic. These UFOs did circles around our airplanes at the time. They did buzzing, they did face-to-faces, and it was genuinely humiliating. And yet they didn't destroy our Air Force. In 1952, in Washington, D.C., what they call the invasion of D.C., that happened over a period of about 2 weeks. And so we see that part of what he says in this document has been borne out. And he says, but basically, he says that the most important thing he says on here is that they are not, he says, excarnate. He says they are not physical like we are. They are out of the body, and that they can achieve a physicality for a short period of time, but something keeps them from maintaining that. And so they go back to, and he says the word locus or Vedas, which is old Vedic language for parallel levels of existence that never intersect with each other. And he says that's where they come from. They do not come from our the next galaxy over, or the next nebula, or anything in our time space. That's what he says.
Now, that I find that very interesting, but also I've heard a number of people speculate that, and even I think Jacques Vallée actually has mentioned along the lines where there's speculations that it could be a combination or something that we've never thought of. So what are you hardline to this theory, or do you think that it's possible that we also could be visited from another galaxy or solar system, or through a dimension, or somehow the same way?
Yeah, it's just that the extraterrestrial theory, I just don't see that it matches up to anything that has happened or anything that really has been produced in the last few centuries, other than Roswell, which I believe that Roswell was a psyop. It was a double trick operation that was put together partly by alien visitors, and with their possibly for purposes of technology transfer, and also to make us believe, very important agenda item, that alien visitors are physical, completely physical. But I haven't seen, SETI has been looking for signals for how long. We've had so much looking out towards our physical space out there. and there's never been anything to match up with the physical extraterrestrial hypothesis. And not that I haven't seen anything that is credible that has been produced. But if it is, I'm certainly open to look at it. But I just haven't seen it yet. Not in an open way that it should be being produced.
So if someone can travel through dimensions through vibration, I've heard theories about the vibration as far as actually being able to go through solid matter and all that. Things are supposed to be possible. So if that is some type of technology, are you speculating that humankind will look into that eventually as we progress? And how would we even know there was another dimension that existed? And it's kind of an interesting topic. I don't really understand enough about it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of cases where these UFOs, the genuine UFOs, the real ones, the ones that are unexplainable, they just seem to disappear. Mm-hmm. They don't take off to the horizon where people can follow it with the naked eye. A lot of times they simply disappear, or they go into a plasmic sort of transition, and then they disappear. Yeah. So where are they going? Where are they going to? See, that's an interdimensional observation right there. And when so many people have seen these alien visitors come through walls and do things that suggest extra-dimensional, non-physical abilities. Let's put it that way. These patterns and these clues repeat again and again and again from case to case. So, but now that does not exclude a lot of other theories that could be going on at the same time. There's probably a portion of UFO observations that could be human military in origin. So sure, that could exist. There could be other things that are also going on at the same time that are some people have speculated that alien visitors could be human beings from the future as well. That's a possibility. Of course, that's none of these things are mutually exclusive, but the extra-dimensional aspect of it, I believe, is the most important, because what it does is it frees us from a lot of agendas that are going forward right now that are using human beings towards purposes that should not be used. That's what's important about extra dimension. What
do you see as like the best argument against it? Like I'm sure you've been either corresponding with people about this or been perhaps on another show or something like that. What is like the strongest case that you've heard against extra dimensional?
Oh, that's easy. It's that when we go interview witnesses and we talk to people who've gone through these abduction experiences and these observation experiences, they will swear. They will hold up their hand and swear that these experiences are completely physical, that they are what we call real, that they happen here and now in our time space, and that the aliens they have had contact with are completely and utterly physical. And that's definitely, and that is their perception. That is what they feel. I mean, when Travis Walton was a very young man in the 1970s, and he was abducted. Supposedly he was abducted and taken in what we believe may have been a ship. He took an instrument and started swinging at these greys, that were trying to restrain him. You can't get more physical than that. So because of that, and he actually struck one of them. And at that point, they just went into full retreat because they were not prepared for aggression on this physical level. and so they beat a retreat. So, like I said, that is the strongest argument against it, because the people who are the perceivers, the experiencers, they perceive these experiences as completely physical. That's the strongest argument.
Okay, so if they were physical, could they be physical? I think I heard you say that extra dimensionals could be physical, but for a short time. And why would that be, say, a short time compared to they could stay physical for any amount of time? Is it because of the vibration?
There's some kind of condition that has changed in the last few millennium, I believe. Something changed to make our time space difficult for them. That's what I believe has happened. Because if you go back to prehistory, history before we knew history, it's pretty obvious that alien visitors were able to be here on a continual basis in the past, because we see the things that they've built, that they've created, and that goes back to the Anunnaki, of course, and the time of the Anunnaki and other alien races, that we have all these monoliths, megaliths around the earth that were not created by humans. We see remnants of civilization. We see items on the moon, on the dark side of the moon, that are not human created, because they're too large. They're not practical for humans to have created. On Mars, we see remnants, and probably in other parts of the solar system too. So there was a time before recorded history when alien visitors could be here as long as physically and as long as they wanted to. But something shifted. Something shifted to change all that. And that's why we're in a situation now where they can't be here long enough to build more pyramids like they possibly have in the past. But what exactly changed? I don't know. It had to be, I believe it may have been something to do with our time and space, something that changed regarding that.
Well, if it's a vibration situation type of thing, you could also speculate that now we're blasting with all types of radio waves and microwaves of everything you could possibly imagine is with our technology. So I don't know. Some people have speculated that UFOs have crashed because of radar waves. They just weren't prepared for that. So you never know. It could be, if I'm going down this rabbit hole and saying, yes, I agree with you that they're extra-dimensional, then I could also say that, perhaps technology that we have today may have changed the reasoning for why they can't stay here long if that's the case.
Oh, sure. Sure, you're an excellent attorney. You can argue both sides, but the thing is that one of the things in my books that I always go back to again and again is that alien visitors are not like humans. I don't believe they can be interfered with in the ways that humans could be. I believe they are so far ahead in technology that it will be difficult for us to imagine. Like Arthur C. Clarke said, a science that is sufficiently advanced appears to be magic to us, and I believe that's how far advanced they are. I don't really see that they need to physically cram themselves into metal shells like we would, and I don't see that they could be interfered with by radar. And I don't believe that the ship that crashed at Roswell was a genuine vehicle with alien visitors in it, because I just don't believe I don't believe they have that. That their level of technology, I believe, is so much farther advanced than that it would be difficult for us to imagine what the real state of their technology is. And I believe that Roswell was something actually put together, was actually a psyop put together by alien visitors, hand in hand with the elite powers in control of our societies, in order to maybe transfer technology and also to put out that understanding that alien visitors are physical, that was one of the accomplishments of Roswell for the next 50, 60 years.
We have questions coming in from the chat room, and I will get to our forum. We have some questions as well. But Belinda wants to know if this is the case, and how come there are radiation levels, high radiation levels, for instance, Rendlesham Forest and a few other cases like that. How does this fit into the whole equation?
Yeah, I think that when you have plasmic vehicles plasmic is the nearest to understanding that I can probably get to of understanding the material that their UFOs are made out of. For me, that's they're a type of plasma that they're made out of, which means they are able to shift in their state, the state of being, from sort of light gaseous material to other materials. And those transitions, I believe, in our world, in our time space, creates radiation of different types. And that's why that's a classic signal, mark of genuine UFO experiences, is when you have those radiation markings and the radiation burns that are left behind and so forth like that. I don't think it's because the vehicles themselves are generating that radiation on purpose. I think there's something about the transformation states that they go through that somehow generates that radiation of those types. All
right, that's it for the free part of the show. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, you can watch the whole show live on YouTube right at podcastufo.com every Wednesday night at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, if you can't afford to help us out, we do appreciate every listener, and you can listen to the whole show on Thursday evenings on the Dark Matter Digital Network, and that's at 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we have Don Ledger. He's going to be on to talk about Shag Harbor. So that should be a good show, and we'll see you here next week. I want to thank Peggy for managing our Facebook page. There's about 23,000 people that are liked on there, and we share UFO information and a lot of science information that comes out. You will see on that Facebook scroll. Thanks so much, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky.